Mr. Castiglione, thanks for joining us today. How are we doing?
Very well. It's a wonderful day here. Beautiful, 77, and not a cloud in the sky and bright sun.
I feel like there's always not a cloud in the sky in your world. When you're watching baseball, it feels like there's always bright sun. Is that accurate?
You got it. Yes, indeed. And we'll be on tomorrow. I'll have the broadcast with Will Middlebrooks at the Twins Park.
Oh, nice. Look forward to hearing your voice again. So this is the first spring training for you without preparing to be the full-time voice of the Boston Red Sox. What has this been like? What has this been like, doing some games, paying attention, but knowing you're not all in on the season? Has it been different for you?
Not really so far. It's been pretty much the same. I've been to the ballpark several times, worked the 3 fantasy camps in January. So it's been pretty much the standard procedure that I've had for several years. That'll change, probably on opening day. I'll feel it then. But, right now it's still nice to be part of the Red Sox organization, and I'll be doing some 30 events for them, different things, including the broadcast on occasion, and it should be fun.
Oh, that's fantastic, Joe. Obviously, the vibes, the feelings, the energy coming out of Fort Myers right now are tremendous, and expectations for this iteration of the Boston Red Sox continue to rise on a daily basis. Have you had a chance to interact with any of the guys that are some of the new guys that are pumping the team full of some of this optimism, specifically Alex Bregman, who's off to an awesome start in the clubhouse, on the bus, and in the field for the Sox?
Yes, I've interacted with Alex. He's very happy to be here, and he really has taken the leadership role right away. Of course, he's a veteran. He's 31. He's been around in World Championship teams, 2 of them, in fact, and he seems right at home and very, very comfortable here, and comfortable with the Boston media as well, and in the environment, because, Boston is probably the toughest place to play. The focus is so intense, unlike other markets, especially where you have 2 teams like New York or San Francisco area and L.A. area. But I think, he fits right in. He's very comfortable, and I think that's going to be a big plus. And, the Red Sox management tells us how ticket spiked and interest spiked as soon as his signing was announced, and that has really been big. We haven't had that probably since the signing of J.D. Martinez around the same time in spring training in 2018. We know what happened that year.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, you maybe just answered my question, but I'm going to ask it anyway, Joe, is, just with all the pitching, trades and signing Alex Bregman and the young guys coming up, Joe, it feels like, at least in the last few years, I mean, the hype and excitement, anticipation hasn't been this high for a Red Sox season in a while. Can you remember? Does this off season and going into this spring training and with all the excitement, with the kind of mixture of young and old, does it remind you of any other seasons in prior Red Sox history that you can think of that it reminds you of with all this excitement building?
Yeah, I think it reminds me of 2018 when they won 119 games through the season and postseason, not only because of the signing of Bregman, or in 18 the signing of J.D. Martinez, but the emergence of young players. I mean, we had the 3 Bs, Betts, Benintendi, and Bogarts, of course, and the outfield, and Jackie Bradley, 4 Bs actually, 3 in the outfield. And I think that the excitement is similar. Unusual, it would be doubtful that any of the 3 really outstanding rookies will start, although it's possible. You never know. Injuries have a lot to do with that. But I think it's a big plus to have the youth, the veterans, and especially acquiring the pitching. We watched Crochet a couple of days ago. I mean, he was absolutely dominant. I know the radar gun was a little quick, but it had him at 101, and he had a devastating slider.
Hall of Fame broadcaster Joe Castiglione joining us here on WEEI Afternoons. Joe, you've seen Alex Cora in basically the totality of his tenure with the Red Sox, both as a player and a manager multiple times. Just wondering, sort of, when you observe the way he's handling this team this spring and handling his business, if anything jumps out or seems different in your eyes, given what you've seen from him in the past.
No, I think he's an established manager, an established winner. who really knows players. He knows their psyche. Of course, he knows their physical capabilities and their limitations. And I think his approach is very similar to what it's been. I don't look for any drastic changes there. It will be interesting to see what happens with the closing role. Because right now, Liam Hendricks has struggled a little bit. He hasn't pitched in a couple of years. First with a cancer, then with the Tommy John. Chapman, typical. He's thrown hard. He's been a little while, but has had his strikeouts. And Slayton could be in the mix, too. It could be a multi-closer situation. I was talking to Pedro Martinez, who thinks that can work. He said it worked with his Expo team when he was in Montreal before getting traded to the Red Sox. But that really hasn't been discussed yet, and that's why, the last week of spring training will be the most critical.
So, Joe, we've made a lot of what will happen with Rafael Devers and him wanting at first not to move off of third base, and now it seems his stance has softened, hasn't even been able to get into spring training action yet, and obviously Bregman would represent a defensive upgrade at third. You were around calling all those amazing games during the prime of David Ortiz's career. Do you think he certainly could never be David personally, but do you think Rafael has the ability in him to switch to DH and have the kind of offensive impact that Big Papi did in his prime?
I would think so. I think he can be very impactful in that role, and it looks like that will be his role because Bregman has not played second base at all in games. Say he may a little later in camp, but I think if they were planning to use him there, he would have been playing there by now. It'll be interesting to see who wins the second base job. That will have a lot to do with things. But I think Rafi will adjust to that role and flourish in it.
Joe, I'm curious. You mentioned that maybe the closing role is just something you're keeping an eye out for. Just something that you may have small concern at this point for. Is there another position? Is there another place on the field or in the batting order or whatever that you think is maybe thin or you're a little bit concerned about that maybe they could still have maybe boost a little bit if before spring training ends?
Well, I think second base is critical, and who can turn the double play best probably is the most important factor with Grissom and David Hamilton, perhaps Kristen Campbell, although right now I wouldn't think he'd get the start there. But there's a lot of time left, and we'll see what happens. But I think looking at the defensive situation is the most critical in that regard. And if one person wins the closer's role, that's fine. I mean, that means that they've dominated. And if it's a split role, that could work too. It's tough to make it that way. I remember in the late 80s, the Red Sox had Lee Smith and Jeff Reardon as co-closers. That did not work because both wanted the save. They wanted the stats. I think it might be a little different with this group, although because, Hendricks is coming off the injury. Chapman has not been a closer for a couple of years, and Slayton's never been a closer. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out.
Joe, what are your thoughts on the younger players and the prospects and the fact that for a while it seemed like we were putting a lot of stock in them? Marcelo Meyer had to be the next great thing, Christian Campbell, Roman Anthony, even Brian Bayo with his year last year. It seems like all those guys are now kind of pushed in the background a little bit behind all these veterans that are here to do their jobs. That has to be a good thing for them in terms of their long-term development, right?
Yeah, I mean, they're still young and could use the reps at Worcester, but it's so exciting to have prospects like that. We haven't had them since, the Mookie and Bogarts group were young. So I think it's really a great plus. And Marcelo Meyers looked very, very good. Anthony had an illness. They both did, actually, that cost them a few days. But, they're the real thing. I don't think there's any question. Just the way they carry themselves is impressive.
Joe, we appreciate you joining us today. Before I let you go, I got to ask you one question, though, because when I hear Joe Castiglione's voice in my head, and you may not like this, it's swinging a pop-up. It's one of the favorite. It's usually at the end of a game, and your tone is like, we just lost 6-4.
Can you
swinging
believe
a
it?
pop-up.
Swinging a pop-up.
What is your
Can you believe it works better? It's more exciting.
is that your
It's a
favorite?
true emotion, though.
Yeah,
it's a true emotion.
And that's the beauty of your tone of your voice, is we always knew what was going on almost before we even heard the details because we heard your tone. So, and we'll hear that again tomorrow. Are you looking forward to it?
Yeah, it should be a lot of fun. Hope they play a lot of regulars. They probably will because the Twins Park is 6 miles from the Red Sox Park, so not a lot of time no time on I-75.
Perfect. Okay, well, enjoy the game.